Mr. Barnes looked over the man's shoulder, and could scarcely believe his eyes when he observed Mr. Mitchell, alive and well, brushing his hair before a mirror. "I've rung for you twice, Williams," said Mr. Mitchell, and then, seeing Mr. Barnes, he added, "Ah, Mr. Barnes, you are very welcome. Come in. Why, what is the matter, man? You're as white as though you had seen a ghost." "Thank God, you're safe!" fervently ejaculated the detective, going forward and grasping Mr. Mitchell's hand. "Here, read this, and you will understand." He drew out the afternoon paper and handed it to him. "Oh, that," said Mr. Mitchell carelessly. "I've read that. Merely a sensational lie, worked off upon a guileless public. Not a word of truth in it, I assure you." "Of course not, since you're alive. But there is a mystery about this which is yet to be explained." "What? A mystery? And the great Mr. Barnes has not solved it? I am surprised. I am indeed. But then, you know, I told you after Goldie made a fizzle of our little joke, that if I should choose to play the principal part, you would not catch me. You see, I have beaten you this time. Confess, you thought that was my corpse which you gazed upon at the morgue." "Well," said Mr. Barnes reluctantly, "the identification certainly seemed complete, in spite of the condition of the face, which made recognition impossible. Yes, I flatter myself the whole affair was artistic." "Do you mean that this whole thing is nothing but a joke? That you went so far as to invent cables and letters from Paris just for the trifling amusement of making a fool of me?" Mr. Barnes was evidently slightly angry, and Mr. Mitchell, noting this fact, hastened to mollify him. No, it's not quite so bad as that," he said. "I must tell you the whole story, for there is yet important work to do, and you must help me. No, Williams, you need not go out. Your anxiety over my absence entitles you to a knowledge of the truth. A short time ago I heard that a very rare gem was in the market, no less a stone than the original emerald which Cortez stole from the crown of Montezuma. The emerald was offered in Paris, and I was notified at once by the dealer, and authorized the purchase by cable. A few days later I received a dispatch warning me that there was danger. I understood at once, for similar danger had lurked about other large stones which are now in my collection. The warning meant that I should not attempt to get the emerald from the custom house until further advices reached me, which would indicate the exact nature of the danger. Later I received the letter which was found on the body, now at the morgue, and which I suppose you have read." Mr. Barnes nodded assent. "I readily located the man Palmer at the Imperial, and from his openly using his name I knew that I had a dangerous adversary. Criminals who disdain aliases have brains and use them. I kept away from the custom house until I had satisfied myself that I was being dogged by a veritable cutthroat, who of course was the tool hired by Palmer to rob, perhaps to kill me. Thus acquainted with my adversaries, I was ready for the enterprise." "Why did you not solicit my assistance?" asked Mr. Barnes. "Partly because I wanted all the glory, and partly because I saw a chance to make you admit that I am still the champion detective baffler. I sent my wife and daughter to Europe, that I might have time for my scheme. On the day after their departure I boldly went to the custom house and obtained the emerald. Of course I was dogged by the hireling, but I had arranged a plan which gave him no advantage over me. I had constructed a pair of goggles which looked like simple smoked glasses, but in one of these I had a little mirror so arranged that I could easily watch the man behind me, should he approach too near. However, I was sure that he would not attack me in a crowded thoroughfare, and I kept in crowds until time for dinner, when by appointment I met my neighbor Mordaunt, and remained in his company until I reached my own doorway late at night. Here he left me, and I stood on the stoop until he disappeared into his own house. Then I turned, and apparently had much trouble to place my latch key in the lock. This offered the assassin the chance he had hoped for, and gliding stealthily forward, he made a vicious stab at me. But in the first place I had put on a chain armor vest, and in the second, expecting the attack to occur just as it did, I turned swiftly, and with one blow with a club I knocked the weapon from the fellow's hand, and with another I struck him over the head, so that he fell senseless at my feet. "Bravo!" cried Mr. Barnes. "You have a cool nerve." I don't know. I think I was very much excited at the crucial moment, but with my chain armor, a stout loaded club in one hand, and a derringer in the other, I never was in any real danger. I took the man down to the wine cellar and locked him in one of the vaults. Then I called a cab and went down to the Imperial in search of Palmer, but I was too late. He had vanished. "So I discovered," interjected Mr. Barnes. "I could get nothing out of the fellow in the cellar. Either he cannot or he will not speak English. So I've merely kept him a prisoner, visiting him at midnight only to avoid Williams, and giving him rations for another day. Meanwhile I disguised myself and looked for Palmer. I could not find him. I had another card, however, and the time came at last to play it. I deduced from Palmer's leaving the hotel on the very day when I took the emerald from the custom house that it was prearranged that his hireling should stick to me until he obtained the gem, and then meet him at some rendezvous previously appointed. Hearing nothing during the past few days, he had perhaps thought that I had left the city, and that his man was still upon my track. Meanwhile I was perfecting my grand coup. With the aid of a physician who is a confidential friend, I obtained a corpse from one of the hospitals, a man about my size, whose face we battered beyond description. We dressed him in my clothing, and fixed the dagger which I had taken from my would-be assassin so tightly in the backbone that it would not drop out. Then one night we took our dummy to the river and securely anchored it in the water, and last night I simply cut it loose and let it drift down the river." "You knew, of course, that it would be taken to the morgue," said Mr. Barnes. "Precisely. Then I dressed myself as a blind beggar, posted myself in front of the morgue, and waited." "You were the beggar?" ejaculated the detective. "Yes. I have your quarter, and I shall prize it as a souvenir. Indeed, I made nearly $4 during the day. Begging seems to be lucrative. After the newspapers got on the street with the account of my death, I looked for developments. Palmer came in due time and went in. I presume that he saw the dagger, which was placed there for his special benefit, as well as the empty jewel case, and at once concluded that his man had stolen the gem and meant to keep it for himself. Under these circumstances he would naturally be angry, and therefore less cautious and more easily shadowed. Before he came out, you turned up and stupidly brought a cab, which allowed my man to get a start on me. However, I'm a good runner, and as he only rode as far as 3rd Avenue and then took the elevated railroad, I easily followed him to his lair. Now I will explain to you what I wish you to do, if I may count on you." "Assuredly." "You must go into the street, and when I release the man in the cellar, you must track him. I will go to the other place, and we will see what happens when the men meet. We will both be there to see the fun." An hour later Mr. Barnes was skillfully dogging a sneaking Mexican who walked rapidly through one of the lowest streets on the east side, until finally he dodged into a blind alley, and before the detective could make sure which of the many doors had allowed him ingress, he had disappeared. A moment later a low whistle attracted his attention, and across in a doorway he saw a figure which beckoned to him. He went over and found Mr. Mitchell. "Palmer is here. I have seen him. You see, I was right. This is the place of appointment, and the cutthroat has come here straight. Hush! What was that?" There was a shriek, followed by another, and then silence. "Let us go up," said Mr. Barnes. "Do you know which door?" "Yes, follow me." Mr. Mitchell started across, but just as they both reached the door, footsteps were heard rapidly descending the stairs. Both men stood aside and waited. A minute later a cloaked figure bounded out, only to be gripped instantly by those in hiding. It was Palmer, and he fought like a demon, but the long, powerful arms of Mr. Barnes encircled him, and with a hug that would have made a bear envious, the scoundrel was soon subdued. Mr. Barnes then manacled him, while Mr. Mitchell ascended the stairs to see about the other man. He lay sprawling on the floor, face downward, stabbed in the heart. The end of the Montezuma Emerald by Rodriguez Ottolenghi.